apologize once more that today the Public Protector will not be releasing the PRASA report. As we have indicated in the media statement last week, the PRASA report has been delayed once again due to the extensive responses to the Section 7 letters that the Public Protector received. She's still analyzing those and applying her mind before releasing the report. And a new date will be announced sometime this week. I would also like to clarify that the purpose of today's media review is not to reissue the report, the Public Protector's report that was titled the confusion that has been circulating regarding whether or not the Public Protector in her remedial action as the President or as the Minister of Police, and to determine how much the President needed to pay, and also to deal with the information about what the Public Protector said and didn't say in the report. The Public Protector will also explain that there has been no fight between her and the President, and that all letters between her office and the President's office have been cordial. So today she will read a statement that she would have read before the parliamentary ad hoc committee had she been invited. I will introduce myself. I am Nkandla. I'm the spokesperson for the Public Protector. And on the panel, I'm joined by the Public Protector Advocate Thuli Madonsela. And to my extreme left is Mr. Zukula, the Chief Executive for Outreach and Stakeholder Management. As usual, after the Public Protector
Unfortunately, it seems as if we have a bad connection there. We'll try and rectify that and then go back to the Public Protector. But right now, let's take a break and we'll be right back after that.
In its 20 years of existence, the office turned 20 this coming October. This office has never received such vitriolic attacks from politicians as it has done following the release of report number 25 of 2013-14, titled Secure in Comfort. What is encouraging, though, is that not once has any of the attacks suggested or implied that Secure in Comfort deviated from the approach taken by my team and I in the manner in which we investigated and presented findings and remedial action in respect of other reports issued under the Executive Members Ethics Act since I became Public Protector in October 2009. In this regard, it must be noted that Secure in Comfort was the 11th Executive Members Ethics Act report I issued since being Public Protector, and it was the 5th report dealing with alleged excesses in the administration of benefits for members of the Executive. As the attacks are unleashed by all and sundry, including spokespersons of the governing party in and outside Parliament, without reference to specific offensive extracts from the reports in question or the laws and related prescripts it seeks to enforce, I have wondered what would have President Mandela made of this bizarre turn of events, considering that he once said the following, I quote, "Even the most benevolent of governments are made up of people with all the propensities for human failings. The rule of law, as we understand it, consists in the search of conventions and arrangements that ensure that it is not left to the whims of individual rulers to decide on what is good for the populace. The administrative conduct of government and authorities are subject to scrutiny of independent organs. This is an essential element of good governance that we have sought to have built into our new constitutional order. An essential part of that constitutional architecture is those state institutions supporting constitutional democracy. Among those are the Public Protector, the Human Rights Commission, the Auditor General, the Independent Electoral Commission, the Commission on Gender Equality, the Constitutional Court, and others." President Mandela proceeds to say the following, I quote, "It was for me never reason for irritation, but rather a source of comfort when these bodies were asked to adjudicate on actions of my government and office and judged against it. One of the first judgments of our Constitutional Court, for example, found that I, as President, administratively acted in a manner they would not condone. From that judgment, my government and I drew reassurance that the ordinary citizens of our country would be protected against abuse, no matter from which quarters it would emanate. Similarly, the Public Protector, in brackets, Ombudsman, had on more than one occasion been required to adjudicate in such matters. Having been unable to hold a formal meeting with His Excellency President Zuma, I've also been wondering what he's making of these vicious attacks in the light of him having said the following on 15th March 2011, after I had released several reports under the Executive Members Ethics Act. Speaking to fellow Public Protector-like institutions in Durban at the launch of the African Ombudsman Research Center, President Zuma said, I quote, "The Office of the Public Protector has to ensure that citizens are protected from violations of their rights, the abuse of power, negligence, unfair discrimination, and maladministration. People will have faith in the office if they know that the public protector will act impartially and protect their rights. Society needs to believe in that the office of the public protector will not be influenced by either the complainants or those institutions or individuals that are being investigated. We in government respect the constitutionally guaranteed independence of our Chapter 9 institutions. We respect the work of the public protector even when we disagree with the findings or censure from that office. We respect our Chapter 9 institutions as well as the judiciary and parliament, the other two independent arms of the state. We value these institutions of our democracy because we are proud of the constitution of our country, which we work so hard to develop. In this regard, I was pleased to read the service pledge by our public protector in the annual report of the public protector for the financial year 2009 to 2010. She pledged to be accessible to and be trusted by all persons and communities, take prompt remedial action, and promote good governance in the conduct of all state affairs. I would encourage that this important pledge by our public protector be emulated by our government departments. I have wondered if the political conduct we've witnessed as an office, nation, and the world can be viewed as consistent with the National Development Plan, which asserts that, I quote, overcoming corruption, lack of accountability in society requires political will, sound institutions, a solid legal foundation, and an active citizenry that holds public officials accountable. In addition to progressive laws, South Africa has created a number of institutions that deal with corruption and hold public officials to account. These include oversight institutions such as the Auditor General and the Public Protector that were established in terms of Chapter 9 to strengthen constitutional democracy. The National Development Plan was adopted by this National Assembly in 2014 without any reservations. Honourable Speaker, I provide my thoughts to you through this platform today with the hope that perplexing statements such as the public protector is governing herself, she issues her reports to the public instead of Parliament, and the public protector misled the nation will not feature in the National Assembly when the House deliberates on the contested upgrades at the President's House in response to the report issued by the Minister of Police and presented to the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee on 21 July 2015. The Public Protector, South Africa, as you know, is an independent constitutional institution established under Section 181 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, together with other institutions that we collectively refer to as Chapter 9 institutions, with the mandate to support and strengthen constitutional democracy. It is important to note up front that Section 181 states that, I read, the following state institutions strengthen constitutional democracy in the Republic: A, the Public Protector; B, the South African Human Rights Commission; C, the Commission for the Promotion of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities; D, the Commission for Gender Equality; E, the Electoral Commission. 2, these institutions are independent and subject only to the Constitution and the law, and they must be impartial and must exercise their powers and perform their functions without fear, favor, or prejudice. 3, other organs of state, through legislative and other measures, must assist and protect these institutions to ensure the independence, impartiality, dignity, and effectiveness of these institutions. 4, no person or organ of state may interfere with the functioning of these institutions. 5, These institutions are accountable to the National Assembly and must report on their activities and performance of their functions to the National Assembly at least once a year. Honourable Speaker, you must agree with me that in view of the establishment clause for the Public Protector being the same one for the Auditor General, Electoral Commission and the others, there is no additional or special accountability for the Public Protector above Section 182(5) of the Constitution, which regulates accountability for all of the Chapter 9 institutions. It therefore follows, I respectfully submit, that no public functionary, including members of the National Assembly, has a right to do to or about the Public Protector what is patently prohibited or impermissible in respect of the Auditor General, the Electoral Commission, and the others. For example, the Electoral Commission cannot pronounce that the elections were not free or fair, or the opposite, and the National Assembly responds by appointing its own committee to look into the same matter and arrive at a different conclusion. The same applies with regard to the Auditor General's outcomes. No institution may, after the Auditor General has issued his report, decide to establish an internal audit body to re-audit the accounts and issue a different statement. The executive, too, cannot do the same. As President Mandela said in the quote on even the most benevolent of governments, the architecture of our democracy includes scrutiny of the acts of politicians and other public functionaries by independent administrative and judicial bodies, such as the Public Protector. The rule of law, accordingly, does not allow anyone to edit any of the constitutionally imposed institutions out of the public accountability path. It is also worth noting that the arm's length from the political branches of government, particularly the executive, was deliberate. Hence, the Constitutional Court, in the certification judgment, observed as follows, I quote, "The independence and impartiality of the Public Protector will be vital to ensuring effective, accountable, and responsive government. The office inherently entails investigation of sensitive and potentially embarrassing affairs of government. It is our view that the provisions governing removal of the Public Protector from office do not meet the standard demanded by Constitutional Principle 24. I can also not imagine a discussion of the Auditor General or the Electoral Commission's report without engaging with these institutions. I can also not imagine the National Assembly or members of the National Assembly making disparaging remarks about any of these institutions without engaging them. It is further respectfully not contemplated that any reasonable person could reconcile such conduct with constitutional provisions in Section 181, such as, I quote, must assist and protect these institutions to ensure the independence, impartiality, dignity, and effectiveness of these institutions. You will note that I have asked you to look into the matter. You will note, Honorable Speaker, that I speak about the National Assembly asking a committee to look into the matter. And I'm not saying that a committee would be asked to investigate the matter or to review my report. My reference to looking into the matter is because since my report was issued, 2 ad hoc committee deliberations have taken place wherein members have persistently asserted that they are not reinvestigating the matters I've investigated or reviewing the public protector's findings. Yet both these processes are replete with selective references to some of the findings, attacking them, and in the case of the first ad hoc committee, concluding with findings that dispute the findings in the report they persistently claimed to be neither reinvestigating nor reviewing. I thought it prudent to advise on the key issues that form the key content of the attacks against my office and myself since the issuing of the Secure in Comfort report. We have identified the following 10 key issues. The first one is the public release of the report through a media briefing and not via Parliament. 2, authority for classification of installations as security and non-security items. 3, key findings and remedial action relating to the President. 4, key findings and remedial action relating to ministers and deputy ministers. 5, key findings and remedial action relating to officials and contractors. 6, relationship between the Public Protector's report and the SIU report. 7, the name Secure in Comfort, or rather the title Secure in Comfort. 8, the legality of the police minister's report. 9, the reporting process map as set out in the Executive Members Ethics Act. And 10, the Public Protector's follow-up on remedial action. I start with the public release of reports through a media briefing and not via Parliament. An issue has been made of why the report Secure in Comfort was released at a media briefing and not presented to Parliament first. One version given to a Sunday paper, a bold-faced lie, I believe, was that the report was scheduled to be released in Zimbabwe. The report emanated from an investigation into possible violation of the Executive Ethics Code by the President. The investigation was duly requested by a Member of Parliament under Section 61A of the Executive Members Ethics Act, number 82 of 1998. This meant that the manner of reporting was determined by the Executive Members Ethics Act. This act requires the Public Protector to report to the President, on whom alone is executive authority vested, who in turn must, within 14 days of receiving the report, submit such report to the Speaker of the National Assembly with comments thereon, together with a report on any action taken or to be taken in regard thereto. The report was duly submitted to the President before its release on 19 March 2014. The President duly wrote to the Speaker of the National Assembly within 14 days, which was on the 2nd of April 2014. The President had earlier on been favored with the full report as a draft, titled Provisional Report, in response to which he submitted a comprehensive report prepared by his lawyers. A meeting had also been subsequently held with 2 of his lawyers to deal with issues of concern by him. The report was thereafter released to the public via a media briefing on 19th March 2014. The submission of the report to Parliament directly would not only have been in contravention of Section 3.5 of the Executive Members' Ethics Act, it would also have been in violation of the doctrine of separation of powers. Regarding the enforcement of the Executive Members' Ethics Act, Parliament's role is that of oversight and not executive action. Regarding the use of media briefings, the practice of releasing public protector reports through a media briefing predates the current public protector. It's also a global practice by ombudsmen-like institutions across the globe. It is also in line with the founding values of our democracy, which include openness and transparency as entrenched in Section 1 of the Constitution, read with Section 182.5 of the Constitution, which states the following. I now read from Section 182.5 of the Constitution. Any report issued by the Public Protector must be open to the public unless in exceptional circumstances to be determined in terms of national legislation require a report to be kept confidential. However, when a report is issued only in terms of the Constitution and the Public Protector Act, the principal legislation regulating the Public Protector's exercise of her or his investigative powers as invested in Section 182.1 of the Constitution, the reporting arrangements are determined by Section 8 of the Public Protector Act. According to Section 8 of the Public Protector Act, there is no obligation on the Public Protector to submit any report to Parliament, although all reports except those given to the President under the Executive Members' Ethics Act are routinely submitted to the Speaker of the National Assembly, or rather copies of this report are submitted routinely to the Speaker of the National Assembly. Section 8.2 regulates the submission of findings to the National Assembly in the following manner. 2A, the Public Protector shall report in writing on the activities of his or her office at least once every year, provided any report shall also be tabled in the National Council of Provinces. 2B, the Public Protector shall at any time submit a report to the National Assembly on the findings of a particular investigation if 1. He or she deems necessary. 2. He or she deems it in the public interest. 3. It requires the urgent attention of or an intervention by the National Assembly. 4. He or she is requested to do so by the chairperson of this, by the Speaker of the National Assembly. 5. He or she is requested to do so by the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. For the record, this office has never failed to present a requested report, even where such report was not requested by one of the presiding officers, but by one of the committees, such as the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interests. The allegation regarding failure to favour Parliament with reports is accordingly patently unfair and untrue. The second issue I want to deal with is the key findings made and remedial action relating to the President in the Secure and Comfort report. Key findings regarding the President's conduct principally relate to whether or not he acted in violation of the Executive Ethics Code in connection with the public-funded upgrades at his private home in Nkandla. Key findings in this regard relate to what I made of the President having been alerted as early as November 2009 about possible irregularities and excessive expenditure in the upgrades to his private home. The second issue I had to deal with is whether or not the value of his estate had been unduly increased through such installations that should never have been installed on the authority of current prescripts regulating security upgrades. In so determining, I also took into account not just the prescripts, I also looked at the determinations made by authorized security experts from the South African Police Services. They made such determinations on what should be security in addition to what was prescribed and recorded what was to be installed. My answer regarding whether or not the President should have done something to stop or to inquire into further expenditure after the media indicated there were possible alleged irregularities in 2009 is that, yes, the President should have done something. At the time, the cost estimate was 65 million. And at that time, the President, by his own admission, he was interacting with officials through his principal agent, Mr. Makanya, instead of official channels with ministers. I must point out that the Constitutional Court has arrived at the same conclusion in Kumala versus NEC for Education in KwaZulu-Natal, where the Constitutional Court said Section 195 of the Constitution imposes an obligation on public functionaries to take action to prevent or arrest an irregularity that has been brought to their attention. I made this observation in the statement I read during the release of the report titled Secure in Comfort. Regarding the value of the President's estate having been possibly improperly increased at state expense, the finding was that the President and his family had indeed unduly benefited. This finding has nothing to do with an act or omission by the President. It is similar to the doctrine of unjustified enrichment in civil law. It is also in line with the form of improper conduct referred to as improper or unlawful enrichment under Section 6, subsection 4A, Roman figure 4 in the Public Protector Act. Public servants return monies to government regularly when such monies were overpaid to them by mistake. Fault on their part is not a requirement. 3. Key findings and remedial action relating to ministers and deputy ministers. There have been accusations that the report and remedial action targets the President. Firstly, the main complaint in terms of the Executive Members Ethics Act was directed at the conduct of the President. However, the report and all our reports examine the propriety of the conduct of all functionaries who played a part or were supposed to play a part to prevent alleged irregularities. In this particular case, we looked at everyone who was supposed to have played a part or did play a part in determining what was to be procured and in managing the procurement and financial management processes leading to the irregularities that we found. If you look into the report, you'll find that paragraphs 10.612 and 10.613 deal with findings against all the ministers and deputy ministers involved. When following up on remedial action, the presidency has been duly asked about progress in this area, as we've done in respect of other reports relating to the Executive Members' Ethics Act previously. Unfortunately, no progress has been reported on these matters. 4. Key findings and remedial action relating to officials and contractors. It has been insinuated that the report is silent on lapses by officials leading to irregularities and excessive charging by contractors. This cannot be further from the truth. The report deals with unauthorized variation orders and possible overcharging, even making comparisons between the cost of state-funded upgrades and owner-funded upgrades on Part C of the report dealing with supply chain processes. The report identifies all key actors in the supply chain management process, from deciding what to install to procuring such items and indicating irregularities by each were uncovered. The remedial action in paragraphs 11.4 and 11.5 includes action to be taken against relevant officials and contractors. The Department of Public Works submitted a comprehensive compliance report indicating that the SIU had been asked to take the process forward, and when the SIU presented its first report, this office was advised of the findings regarding officials and contractors and action being taken in pursuit thereof, including disciplinary action and criminal action. 5. Authority for naming and classification of its installations as security and non-security items. A lot of accusations have been flying around regarding the reference to items such as a swimming pool, an amphitheater, and classification of items as non-security items. Firstly, I must just explain that we didn't impose ourselves as investigators, as experts on what is a security item and what is not a security item. There are instruments that have been created to help the security experts to determine what is to be installed. Key among those is an instrument for minimum security standards. A simple reading of the Secure in Comfort report will show that it was the task team that installed the items and named them. Such names appear in the architectural designs, the minutes, memoranda, and a document called the apportionment document. This document was prepared by the task team at the request of Deputy Minister Bokopane Zulu to identify items or portion of items for the payment by the owner, His Excellency President J.G. Zuma, and those to be paid for by the state. The swimming pool. In the minutes and the apportionment document, the swimming pool is referred to as a swimming pool. The narrative starting with a discussion that there is a request from the presidency to convert the fire pool into a swimming pool. As the minutes progress, the item is flagged, pending Mr. Makanya, the President's agent, consulting the President on his willingness to pay for the conversion. This matter was pended in the minutes for a period of time. Then suddenly, and without any documents indicating what the owner's response was, we later discover that the fire pool had been converted into a swimming pool. And the apportionment document indicates an amount to be paid by the owner for the conversion. Regarding what then is the structure, where a fire pool has been topped up with swimming pool features, it is clearly a swimming pool with firefighting functionality. But does it matter whether it's clean or not? Certainly not. The investigation was about what was constructed and not how have the installations been maintained or not maintained. The amphitheater. The label amphitheater is given by the task team and the architect in the designs and the apportionment document. This name is given to the terraced installation built in place of an ordinary retaining wall, which would have been similar to the one by the swimming pool. I think those who have been to Nkandla, you would have seen that there is a retaining wall on the side of the swimming pool. It's just a straight retaining wall. Again, it is they who indicate that the amphitheater is for dual purposes. It's sitting space for public gatherings and soil retention due to the extensive disturbance done to the soil by the other installations. The Kraal, Chicken Run, and others. The President, whose submission in response to the provisional report was prepared with the assistance of lawyers, who later engaged with the investigation team, and I, has never denied that he asked for a larger kraal when approached about moving his kraal, which still exists, to an exterior area on account of motion detectors. He has further never denied, stating that this is one thing he was prepared to pay for. Regarding the security status of the kraal, my determination that it was not a security feature was because it was neither in the list of 16 minimum physical security standard items that guided the upgrading of security at the homes of presidents, former presidents, deputy presidents, and former deputy presidents. Nor was it on the list prepared by the authorized security experts, the Visitors Center. The issue about the Visitors Center is not its size or opulence, as has been alleged in the past few weeks. The issue is its justifiability on two grounds: authority to procure it and necessity to procure it. A determination to classify the Visitor Center as a non-security item was made on the basis of it not being among the 16 minimum physical security standards items mentioned in the preceding paragraph. And it was also not listed by the authorized security experts who prepared a document after the threat assessment. In the minutes, it's recorded as one of those items requested by the presidency, but in respect of which we were unable to establish who in the presidency made the said request. Regarding necessity, during the inspection in local, there was an unused building that could have done the same job. The key issue, though, is that it was not security experts that recommended it. Relationship between the Public Protector report and the SIU report. For the record, the SIU arrived at a similar conclusion that some of the items installed were non-security items. The name Secure in Comfort. Short titles of reports issued by this office and similar offices in other countries do not seek to give a literal description of anything. They are chosen for simplicity and for their capacity for multiple interpretations. The feedback received from the public, including academia, is that the short titles are contributing to the strengthening of democracy as they facilitate dialogue better than numbers and long titles. The legality of the report of the Minister of Police. There is no legal basis for setting up an internal executive structure to review the findings of or to reinvestigate a matter investigated or dealt with by a Chapter 9 institution. It cannot be done with the Auditor General, and it cannot be done with the Electoral Commission or the others. This does not mean that the Public Protector or another, this does not mean that the President or another institution affected by a Public Protector's report may not seek advice in assessing a report of a Chapter 9 institution with a view to engaging meaningfully with such a report, where the report deals with complex matters. Such advice, however, must go back to the organ of state or functionary from whom action is required by the Public Protector's report. For such person to make and take responsibility for the decision regarding implementation. In the case in point, the minister who exercises delegated authority at the pleasure of the President, who is the sole repository for executive authority, cannot, under the Executive Members Ethics Act, account to Parliament on behalf of the President. The proper process is for the President to evaluate whatever the minister says to him and go back to Parliament in terms of Section 3 of the Executive Members Ethics Act to give a full account on his intention regarding the Public Protector's report. What about the assertion that it was my report that advised that the Minister of Police should make the determination? I recently noticed on receipt of a letter from the President responding to mine which I had sent to him on 15 June, alerting him to inaccuracies in the report of the Minister of Police, that he was apparently harboring under the impression that it was my report that advised that he asked the Minister of Police for advice. I would like to place on record, as I did with the President on 30 July 2015, that nowhere does the Public Protector's report number 25 of 2013/14 advise the President to, I quote, as the President did, engage the Minister of Police with a view to determine a fair amount to be paid by him in respect of the items identified in this report as not listed in the security list and not reasonably linked to security. Close quotes. I further place on record, as I did with the President, that the appropriate paragraph actually asked the President himself to make the determination with the help of Treasury and the South African Police Services. It specifically states the following: the President is to take steps with the assistance of the National Treasury and the SABC to determine the reasonable course of the measures implemented by the Department of Public Works at his private residence that do not relate to security and which include the visitor center, the amphitheater, the Kekli Kraal, and the chicken run, the swimming pool. The Public Protector is following up on remedial action. When I was appointed Public Protector, this office was already following up on remedial action. One of the reports I found the team already following up on was the Nandoni Dam report, where Advocate Mushwana required the fixing of the dam to prevent further deaths in the community caused by the dam, and also required payment of compensation to affected community members. Public Protector-like institutions globally do the same. In Pakistan, this includes a defiance hearing where an institution that has failed to implement is subjected to a hearing to establish the cause of the defiance. I've already indicated that President Zuma applauded my office for this practice, asking my colleagues in Africa to emulate this office when he addressed them at the launch of the African Ombudsman Research Center in March 2011. The following up on remedial action on Secure in Comfort, on the Secure in Comfort report has been done in respect of all institutions that were expected to comply. So it wasn't at the targeting of the presidency. Honorable Speaker, the bickering, which has included withholding support for this office's request for a much-needed budget increase, is undermining this constitutional institution's optimal contribution to the strengthening of constitutional democracy through administrative scrutiny. I'm accordingly appealing to the National Assembly to collectively exercise leadership to ensure that engagement with this office is informed by and is in line with Section 181 of the Constitution and Section 8 and 9 of the Public Protector Act. Since the bickering started, we are witnessing worrying, defiant trends. The emerging attitudes, though few, are a worrying trend. It's also worth mentioning that the defiant conduct does not even meet the minimum requirements set by the first judgment of the High Court of the Western Cape in the manner between the DA and the SABC and others. That judgment prescribes that respondent institutions or institutions asked to take remedial action have to engage with this office on its findings. One accounting officer, for example, recently sent this office a 2-paragraph response to a formal report in which she basically ignored the report and advised that the complainant, a young father currently unemployed due to maladministration by her institution, should engage with her institution as if there had been no report finding that he had been wronged by her organ of state. With regard to some respondent institutions, we just see court documents delivered by the sheriff of the court without any prior engagement. I respectfully draw your attention to the statement of the Honorable Judge Skeepers in the second judgment of the Western Cape High Court on the SABC matter regarding the importance of this office and how government treats it. After stating that there is confusion regarding the status of the Public Protector's remedial action as envisaged in Section 182(1)(c) of the Constitution, which confusion must be urgently clarified by the Supreme Court of Appeal, Honorable Judge Skeepers stated the following. The lack of clarity regarding the binding effect of the findings of and remedial action taken by the Public Protector has a significant effect on both organs of state and ordinary people for protection against abuse of power. I must indicate that my team and I are concerned that the safety valve an office such as ours is meant to provide by giving a voice to people and better ears to government is being eroded. This office's ability to strengthen constitutional democracy as envisaged in the Constitution and the aspirations of the architects of our democracy is being eroded. Honorable Speaker, you may recall that in the document Building a United Nation, the current governing party is input to the constitutional negotiations. The provision regarding the public protector stated the following: the Constitution shall, as far as possible, empower the poor and the vulnerable to enforce their rights, and shall, among other things, create a Human Rights Commission and a public protector to perform this function. When the Supreme Court of Appeal was called upon to pronounce on this office's powers and consequent responsibilities in the Public Protector versus the Mail and Guardian newspaper and others, the Supreme Court of Appeal instructively stated the following, I quote, "The Office of the Public Protector is an important institution. It provides what will often be a last defense against bureaucratic oppression and against corruption and malfeasance in public office that are capable of insidiously destroying the nation. If that institution falters or finds itself undermined, the nation loses an indispensable constitutional guarantee." Close quote. Madam Speaker, this office's potential for meaningful contribution to proper dialogue between the people and government structures at all levels and implications for peace and stability cannot be overemphasized. We've done this successfully in places such as Dipaliseng, Nala, Ramfisherville, and Olifantshoek. We also should not underestimate the importance of peace and stability to development and the importance of good governance, including public accountability, integrity, and responsiveness to peace and stability. Included in that package are constitutionalism and the rule of law. Honorable Speaker, it also worth considering, as the NDP does, that this office and other integrity institutions have enormous potential to play a meaningful role in curbing the loss of or clawing back public funds that are dearly needed for the delivery of basic services, particularly those promised by the Constitution. In this regard, former Chief Justice Sandile Ngcobo, speaking at the same meeting where the President applauded this office's approach, said the following, quote, "The importance of the role of such institutions is especially clear in many countries throughout Africa, where there was often a desperate need for basic human needs such as food, drinking water, health care, housing, education, and social security. Our countries cannot bear the improper allocation of government resources. Having a public protector or ombudsman with a mandate to investigate and publicly report in government administration is essential. I accordingly appeal that we stop personalizing matters and comply with the Constitution as we partner in helping the people of South Africa exact accountability in the exercise of public power and control over public resources. This is important if government is to play a central role in driving delivery on the constitutional promise of an inclusive South Africa with the freed potential of every person and improved quality of life. I once again advise that my office is available to assist the National Assembly or any of its committees or members by presenting an overview of the report or answering any questions on the report on upgrades at the President's private home in Nkandla, or on any report issued by this office. I'm hopeful that this statement will be received and considered in the spirit of putting our Constitution and our people first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate Madonsela. We've now come to our Q&A session. As usual, we will move on to that session by show of hands. Okay, I will take 5 each. I recognize 1, 2, 3 at the back, 4, and the last one, number 5. We will start with Karen Moon. I'm going to ask a colleague to hand you the roving mic.
Morning, Advocate Madonsela. It's Karen Moore from ENCA. You've made a very heartfelt offer to Parliament to address the questions that have been raised by the ad hoc committee or any other further matters with regard to your report. Do you have any other recourse if they refuse to hear you, and will you take any consider taking legal recourse? And if you don't, and if there is a refusal to hear you, what will that mean in your mind for the legitimacy of this investigation, which you have already raised legal questions about in terms of the Police Minister's report and the ad hoc investigation? Thank you very much.
Sipho Masumbuka for the Times newspaper. Advocate, in hindsight, why exactly do you think the ad hoc committee did not see it fit that you indicted the members in the Nkandla report, especially in light of the attacks directed at your office and that the committee itself is populated by the ruling party members of Parliament? Do you think what you have detailed today as what you would have said had you been afforded the chance to address the committee, exactly why you were not given the chance?
Thank you, Public Protector Alex, Eyewitness News. A couple of questions from me. You spoke about this bickering and the fact that funds were being withheld from your office. Are you now making a direct link between the investigations that you've done, particularly the Nkandla one, and the fact that there is an unwillingness to give you the financial support that you need? So have you now made a direct link between that issue? And also, just in terms of the escalating attacks and the vicious attacks that you've spoken about, surely the one that labeled you a CIA spy was probably top of the pops. Can you give us an update on what's happened with that? Has anyone approached you? Has anything developed on that front? Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Nkandla from Bloomberg News. Public Protector, given that you were not even given the chance to go before the committee, do you think that had you been given the chance, it would have made any difference, seeing as your report was criticized and much of the recommendations were thrown aside either way, and the task was defected to the police minister? Had you been given a chance, do you think it would have made any impact at all?
There's the last one at the back.
Philip Debate from the Mail and Guardian. Ma'am, just about a year ago, we were sitting in this room, I believe, when you told us that you had requested what you termed a quiet meeting with the President to discuss much these kinds of matters. You also said that you would seek an engagement with the presiding officers of Parliament. Can you tell us whether in the 11 months since you have had any such meetings or engagements? And on a related matter, at the time you were talking about, I believe, comments that had been made by the Secretary General of the ANC, Gwedimantashe in particular. Now, given that you're still now, 11 months later, saying that the value of your office has been eroded, at which point do you invoke contempt proceedings?
Thank you for those questions. Ms. Karen Moon, will I take legal action if Parliament does not invite me? Based on the media reports, the committee already voted that I should not be invited. I still don't think, though, that I should take legal action, because my understanding of constitutional democracy is that it includes court processes, but there's other means of engagement. And I'm speaking to the Speaker of the National Assembly through this meeting, and alerting her to two things. One is that there may be an irregularity in that Parliament has been informed that I made a decision or advised the President to ask the Minister of Police to make a determination, and I made no such. So that needs to be looked at, whether this whole process was based on that understanding, which would be an irregularity. I've also indicated some gaps, just generally in the entire process, and clarified some misunderstandings regarding what I said and what I didn't say. I believe that in terms of the case that I've just quoted, Kumalo, this is MEC for Education, KwaZulu-Natal, the Speaker of Parliament is a public functionary like any other public functionary. If she is alerted to a possible irregularity, she is duty bound, according to the Constitutional Code, by Section 195, to look into that irregularity, and if it's possible to prevent it or to arrest it, to do so. So I'm hoping, therefore, that the Speaker of Parliament will not move ahead, or rather the Speaker of the National Assembly will not move ahead with a situation that clearly has no basis in law, but also there's a mistake of fact in the process. Mr. Musama Sambuka. I wish I had those powers where I could know why people do the things that they do. I do not know why Parliament voted, or rather the committee voted against bringing me to assist. I do not know why the first ad hoc committee excluded my input. All I know is that there seems to be a misunderstanding that there's only one section 181. There is no different section that establishes the pub protector. And as I've indicated today, you cannot do to the pub protector what you can't do to the Auditor General. You cannot do to the pub protector what you can't do to the IEC. You can't open a parallel process. You can't deal with an institution supporting constitutional democracy when you feel like dealing with it and exclude it from the process if you don't want to. That's not open to Parliament. But why it has been done, I choose to believe that people are acting in good faith. They thought it was unnecessary, but hopefully after this conversation today, the Speaker of the National Assembly will advise her colleagues that it is necessary, it's improper that this process should be concluded outside the Executive Members' Ethics Act. Because it's not me who's determining the process. There's an act. And that act is based on the fact that there are 3 branches of government, and the executive regulates its own affairs but advises Parliament on how it has dealt with its own affairs. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Masamba. And then Mr. Alex from Eyewitness News. About the bickering and our money, it's not so much that I'm saying the Nkandla report or the Securing Comfort report is the reason why we haven't received money. I'm just saying that bickering, that inability to talk as human beings, to exercise civility, has stood in the way of having a meaningful, rational conversation about the resource needs of this office. This office desperately needs resources. That Parliament agreed that this office needed those resources. To Advocate Mishwana before he left, and when I came in twice, I appeared in Parliament, and the song was the same: we need resources, we'll engage with Treasury on your behalf. What then changed? So the problem is how we talk, though, that this bickering must go away so that we can start having mature and rational conversations about those resources. And then Ms. Amokelang from Bloomberg. I don't think, yes, ma'am, it would have made a difference for me to be there, because where, for example, there's a total misunderstanding, is it a swimming pool, is it not a swimming pool, because it's dirty, can it be called a swimming pool? Conversations such as that, you could readily clarify them, that that's not an issue whether it's dirty or not. For example, the committee went there and was worried about the size of the visitor center, that it's small, it is the size of a constituency office. During my investigation, the size was not the issue. The issue was their authority to build a visitor center, and where does that authority come from? And there was no authority in terms of the legal authorizing instruments. Also, I would have engaged Parliament about the implications of what we've done in Nkandla and what Parliament or what the executive must still be considering doing. What we do for the President, as we stated in the actual report, becomes a regime for everyone. For past presidents, deputy presidents, and other selected functionaries. So if you set the bar like that, and if you ignore the authorizing instruments and the proper structures that are given authority to decide what is security and what is not, then you're opening the floodgates to abuse of public resources. And that would have been in our conversation. The last one is Mr. Philip de Vert. Unfortunately, from Parliament, I have not received letters of acknowledgement to the letters I've written to the Speaker of the National Assembly. I think the last letter I received from the Speaker of the National Assembly was from Speaker Sisulu shortly after I released the report in March last year. From the Presidency, though, I received letters of acknowledgement to every report, and the Presidency has engaged with me. There were attempts to meet, and at the time when the Presidency thought the President might be available, I wasn't available, but more recently we have tried, and it has not been possible. But there hasn't been a sense that there is no room for engagement. And again, the President responds to our letters. Somebody might think that he lashed at us. We just think that he expressed a point of view, and which allowed us to read into his mind and then engage him appropriately.
Thank you. We will move on to the next set of questions. We will take one in front.
Just go back to mine.
All right. Alex, Adamon, Philip at the back. More questions? Karen, last. Thank you.
name is Ranjini Msami from the Daily Maverick. As a public protector, I know that you believe that the premise of the Nkandla report is false, but I want to ask you in particular about one of the aspects of that report, and which is that there should be further spending on the Nkandla project. Do you believe that there should be more money spent on that project? Amongst the comments at the ad hoc committee, apart from the attacks on you and your tweet, was that your report was not sound, to quote them. Do you still stand by all the findings of your report and the conclusions you made, or do you believe that some of the things should be reviewed with the benefit of hindsight? I'd also like to ask you if you believe that since the release of your report last March, there have been developments and on that project, and from what we've seen in the last 2 weeks, that the Nkandla precinct has been left to neglect, and there hasn't been maintenance. Do you think that there is just cause for further investigation from your office into that project and how taxpayers' money has been wasted subsequent to your report being released? Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, Eyewitness News again. I've actually thought of another question in the meantime, so I'm sorry about that. Just to follow up on the spy allegations, if you could give us an update whether anything has happened there. And secondly, there was a lot of issues raised around the confidentiality of the project. In other words, we were in court because they were talking about it being a national key point and the secrecy and the security around it. And then you saw that media tour that was allowed inside it. What did you make of that, given the kind of contention there had been around the secrecy around the president's protection? Thank you.
Karen Moore from ENCA again. What formal reasons has the ad hoc committee given you for not hearing you? Because there was a report publicized in which MP Kabaya said that she was very unhappy that you retweeted a tweet by Pierre de Force of a critical article, and this was why she decided not to hear you. And then, you have painted quite a worrying picture of resources being withheld, of a seeming defiance from government entities to recommendations. What are the implications in your mind if Nkandla becomes something that was like sound and fury signifying nothing, if nothing comes of this, both for the perception of your office but also for its functional reality? Could this entire issue and this entire scandal cripple your office irreparably, do you believe? Thanks.
Philip from the Mail and Guardian again. Ma'am, contempt. You have shied away from instituting any contempt proceedings, so have your predecessors. From what has been said about your office, it does appear to the layperson that it meets the test for contempt. Furthermore, it seems to meet the test for what the Constitutional Court has called real prejudice. So perhaps let me phrase it this way. At what point are you guilty of failing to protect the integrity of your office by not launching contempt proceedings?
Thank you for your comments and questions, Ms. Munsami. I was tempted to retweet what said, "Please don't retweet" from you. Was it yesterday? And then I decided stay out of it, since even retweeting is supposed now to be an endorsement. But on a serious note, there's been a lot that has been said about the report, but none of it goes to specific pages. When I read the statement, I indicated that the interesting about the criticism is that it is very wide and very amorphous. Nobody, for example, has said, number one, when it comes to your decisions on the Executive Ethics Act, on Nkandla, you use a different standard. That's why we indicated how many previous reports did we do, and those we accepted and implemented by the President, and some of them had to do with excessive utilization of members' benefits. Secondly, a lot of the people who are criticizing the report say nothing about the documents that are supposed to be authorizing documents. How many of you have heard in the conversation in Parliament that there was an apportionment document, which was prepared by the very task team that installed those upgrades? Meaning, the people who gave the so-called gifts are the one who determined the owner will pay for these items. It's referred to in this report. But I haven't heard any conversation about it in Parliament, about if the task team meant that some things were to be paid for, and we are saying it was the task team that said these things should be installed, why are we not then going right through with the decisions of the task team? Again, I'm not aware of what part of the report is unsound, because surely somebody saying something is not a swimming pool because it is left unattended. I mean, a lot of people leave their swimming pools unattended. They still remain dirty swimming pools. They don't stop being swimming pools. The amphitheater. You can take strategic pictures of that amphitheater and take them at an angle where you can't see that it is a set of steps that people can see it. And yes, of course, some aloes or something have been grown there, but it still doesn't stop it from what it is. Somebody on Twitter even really tweeted a proper retaining wall, the ones that you normally see in buildings, which is similar to the one. But somebody has to still persuade me what part of that report is unsound. That report starts with saying, did you have authority to do this? That's the first finding is, was there authority to do this? And we base authority on the laws that regulate this, but we realize that when it comes to the President, it's mostly the ministerial, it's the cabinet policy of 2003 that sets up the structures that have to make these decisions. From those structures, you then go to the minimum physical security standards document, and then you then revert back to the structure that is set up in terms of the cabinet policies. Those were the only structures that had the power to make a determination on what should be purchased on government money. And the report sticks to that. Anything else that was not recommended by them had to be closely related to what was recommended by them. For example, if somebody comes and says then a retaining wall wasn't recommended by them, but after you have disturbed the soil, it makes sense that the retaining wall has to be built. But if you then have to make it layered into an amphitheater, there's a cost to it. So the costs that we're speaking about are costs of the upgrade, not just the structure itself. So nothing has changed from where we are sitting. There's no new information that has come to us. We've never said, for example, that a swimming pool would never extinguish fire. A swimming pool is water. So I'm sure that even a child would know that. So the issue was not that it won't do that. The issue was the moment you upgraded it from an ordinary fire pool and put in the swimming pool features, it needed more money, and then somebody had to pay for the cost of the upgrade, and it's something like that. Yeah, the neglect. I think I would say two things, ma'am. The first one is that we didn't investigate the neglect because at the time we're just looking at what was installed. Was it in line with the regulatory framework, and was it decided by the appropriate structures? There seems to have been neglect, and that's something that needs, of course, to be investigated by the Minister for DPW and the Minister of Police urgently, because if some of those things deteriorate, they will need more money to be fixed. Which brings me to your last question: what is my view on the need for some additional money to be spent in Nkandla? It's really not my place to say no additional money should be spent. In the report, we did indicate that no additional money should be spent on further expanding the reach of the upgrades. But when you are completing what was not completed, I don't think it would be reasonable for anyone to say it shouldn't be done. I would say that whatever is done has to be done in accordance with the law, because the idea of securing private households was supposed to be an exception to the rule, because ordinarily government provides residences for functionaries at the level of president, deputy president, and others, and those are the ones that are properly secured. So my short answer finally is possibly they may have to spend, but it would be said if they're spending because of neglect of things they neglected, that then would require them to investigate whose job was it to make sure that there was maintenance. But in the report we also mentioned that installing certain things requires maintenance for life. And when people were considering expanding things that needed to be installed, they should have thought of the implications for lifetime maintenance. Alex, again, on the spy allegations, I haven't heard anything. I heard in the grapevine before the end of June that the minister was telling people that, but it was a grapevine that he was finishing the report. Nobody has ever consulted me or even informed me that I'm being investigated as a spy. Which is interesting, because when my office investigates people, just a delay in informing them that they're being investigated causes them to see red. But I've never been formally informed that I'm being investigated as a spy. Interestingly, I have found that actually when it comes to the judiciary, those that were supposedly linked to me have been told that they've been cleared. So it's quite curious. It's quite a curious story. We will see how it goes. But there was some attack about 2 days ago about somebody who said I'm working for foreign interests. He didn't explain. The spokesperson of a political party said I'm working for foreign interests and did not indicate what are those foreign interests, which takes me to the issue of contempt. We have sought a legal opinion on contempt. Ordinarily, contempt proceedings take place during an investigation, or if it's a court case, contempt happens as the case is unfolding. It's a difficult case when the case has ended and somebody behaves contemptuously. Mr. Devert, I'm now just coming to your issue. I have asked my team to put their heads together to look at that. The area we were keen on using contempt proceedings, and we will be going for the ones that are defiant, is when people are refusing to implement. we have studied very closely the Pakistan system, where after you have issued a report and you've given timelines and there's no movement, you call what they call defiance proceedings, and you get the party consent to account. Of course, if they refuse to account, then you would deal with them in terms of the contempt proceedings. It takes me though to one issue, Mr. Dufert, that I have to explain though, is even if we started contempt proceedings, because the last word on the Western Cape High Court is that there is confusion regarding the powers of the Public Protector. So in that state where all we know based on that court is that we have to be seriously engaged, and there has to be a serious consideration of the outcome of the investigation. We do know that in September, the Supreme Court of Appeal will be sitting to discuss the powers of the Public Protector in the SABC matter. And we're hoping then we will get a final answer on the powers. Previously, the SCA had already said that the Public Protector is more than an ombudsman, and if it were to be ignored, that would be bad for constitutional democracy and public accountability. Then I would end with the last question from Ms. Karen Moon. I have not been given any reasons why I have not been invited to Parliament, because I have not received any responses to any of my letters. I really don't know what would be an impediment to engaging. My understanding is that Parliament or anyone who listens to me and my team do not have to do exactly what we ask, or they don't even have to believe what we believe in, but they just have to engage us rationally and give us an opportunity to explain things. They might shift their view, they might not, but they would have given themselves an opportunity to understand the thinking that influenced this particular report, Secure in Comfort, and other reports that were released. The issue about me retweeting, thank you for raising that, because it's something I did not deal with in the statement. My retweets are not endorsements. I have retweeted people who are insulting me just to send the information around that this one thinks this. So I retweet to inform people, to share information. If I like an idea and agree with an idea, I favor the idea. So my retweets are not endorsements of anything. But even if they were, then you have to ask yourself, is that justification for excluding me? Because for me, that would even be a reason to include me, to ask me, why did you retweet that? And if somebody thinks it's improper to retweet that, then deal with me in terms of the accountabilities under my office. Then there was a question about resources and whether Nkandla or this whole bickering has had crippling effect on our resources and on defiance. I do feel so, because I do think that my engagement with the Justice and Correctional Services Portfolio Committee lacked civility and lacked meaningful engagement, because beyond civility, when you're talking about something, you don't talk at each other or past each other, you deal with an issue by issue and on a factual basis. And our last engagement was not really along those lines. So it has undermined rational discourse between my office and the Justice and Portfolio Committee. regarding defiance, yes, there is an emerging trend to ignore the findings. We even had one municipality that didn't even submit within the 30-day for an implementation plan and didn't ask for an extension. Up until this fiasco, people would at least respect the timelines. And these timelines are not South African timelines. They're used by ombudsman offices globally, where you are asked to do certain things. Because even if you disagree, but you have to work within the system and respond and say, I have a problem with you in this way. And again, the accounting officer who sent a two-paragraph letter, that is contemptuous, because that's refusing to engage. That's not even saying, I have these and these problems with your report. That's just saying, I have no interest in your report. As far as I'm concerned, the status quo before your report exists, and that's how I'm going to engage with this unemployed person. And as I indicate in my report, it's not looking good when it comes to strengthening constitutional democracy, because having these institutions is about saying to people there is another channel you can use to engage with those in the powerful state, because the state is powerful and ordinary person is not. And there's so many avenues that the architects of our democracy created, and some of those include constitutional institutions. And if these avenues then are useless and worthless, people will start thinking twice about using them, and then they may use extra judicial means to engage, which would be protests and related things. And it is in that spirit of good faith that I'm engaging with the Speaker of the National Assembly through this medium, that let's really not only respect the Constitution, but let's be seen to be respecting the Constitution and the rule of law, and let's find each other. Even if at the end of the day we might disagree on things, but let's work within the system. Thank you.
Thanks, Protector. Are there further questions?
All right. I see one hand. Any more questions? Okay, that will be the last question.
Hello, my name is Nkandla. I'm from ANN7. I just want to ask you, do you believe that you have allowed yourself or your office to become the political football between ANC and the other opposition parties, because you have been under tremendous pressure? And also, why don't you approach the court to make the final findings on this whole issue, the Nkandla issue?
Thank you. Ms. Nom? Keldon. Thank you, ma'am. People bend or they throw around allegations of making myself a political football. Let's look at the statement rationally. What is it that I've done that makes me or my office a political football? Perhaps at least maybe in this room somebody can at least point out one thing that I should respond to, concrete thing, and say, you did this, or you didn't do this. Because my office is established to investigate alleged or suspected improper conduct in state affairs, to report on that conduct and to take appropriate remedial action. We may investigate on an allegation, or we may investigate on our own initiative, or what my colleagues would call beromoting. None of these investigations were our own initiatives, except the ones on what we refer to as service failure. When there's service failure, Gogo Dlamini has not been served, and we read some of your newspapers, we do take those as own initiative. But when it comes to these ones about alleged abuse of state resources or malfeasance, we haven't pursued this on our own. In terms of the Executive Members Ethics Act, only members of parliament may report a matter to the public protector. So that's a political process. It will have to be a politician. I didn't make that decision. The architects of our democracy made that decision, that people who have to file complaints under the Executive Members Ethics Act are members of the opposition. And not are members of the opposition, are members of parliament. And it has been members of the opposition and members of the governing party that have submitted complaints to us. I even have a complaint by a minister against another minister on the Executive Members Ethics Act. So I truly am open, though, to persuasion. If somebody can tell me what are these so-called things that I do that make me or my office a political football, because I do not understand. But having said that, constitutional democracy, by its very nature, intends to temper majoritarianism. That's the nature of constitutional democracy. That whilst majority essentially has the opportunity to determine the pace and direction of democracy, but there's certain parameters that are set by the Constitution that you can't go beyond these things. And who determines when that line has been crossed? In our constitutional democracy, it was decided that there will be administrative scrutiny by institutions such as the Public Protector. If you read that quote from former President Nelson Mandela, and there will also be courts. That means that, yes, sometimes we have to override politicians. And I think that they were right, because especially in a proportional representation situation, there aren't individual voices. People decide as a group. So having independent voices was a good idea by architects of our democracy. It's checks and balances, basically, that some things are done by the majority, some are checked, so that we are always staying within the constitutional dream of a South Africa that is inclusive, where everyone's potential is freed and everyone's quality of life is improved regardless of their political persuasion or any other quality. I hope, ma'am, I've answered. But if you do have incidences that you really think we have made ourselves a political football, we would be happy to deal with that. I've been reminded that we were asked why not approach the court of Nkandla. That's similar to the question from Mr. Philip Devert about have I perhaps failed to protect my office by allowing it to be undermined, to be insulted? Let me answer perhaps the first one about failing my office. That's my biggest worry, by the way, Mr. Devert, that it is my hope and wish that I do not want to leave this office weaker constitutionally than I found it. And that's one of the reasons why I have called you here today, because what's happening is not in line with the Constitution and is not in line with the law. And that's the decision that I took, that let me engage with fellow human beings, because they may not be aware that we all established under Section 181. You can't say you're going to do this thing to the Public Protector, but you understand that they are not allowed in respect of the other Chapter 9 institutions. There's only one Chapter 9. So that is my approach to protecting the office. But will I go to court? I will go under extreme circumstances to court, because I believe that the people of South Africa have to protect this office. It's not my office. I'm in this office temporarily, like any other Public Protector. I will be out of this office in September next year. If the people of South Africa feel, as lawyers and as ordinary people, that the Constitution is being trampled on, that personal feelings about people are determining how people are conducting themselves, let the people do something about it. I do know that there's a group that is marching on a particular day, and I've given them my blessing insofar as they've included protection of this office against unconstitutional practices. But I have not suggested at the moment that there's malice in terms of how people are acting. I have assumed that there's good faith and that some balls are dropped by the most benevolent of governments, as former President Nelson Mandela said. Thank you.
Thanks, Protector. This brings us to the end of the media briefing, and we hope that the misinformation have been clarified, and thanks once again for your time. We will allow one-on-one interviews for now.